JUBI, we are now in the 50th Jubilee. The first thing that I want to do while we are here is validate the age of Moses at the time of the Exodus in the Jubilee year 2459.
Obtaining the text now, sir. Major, based on our analysis of the Book of Jubilees, particularly chapters 47 and 48, we can confirm the age of Moses at several critical junctures in his life leading up to the Exodus, according to the third methodology. Here's a summary of the key events, and Moses' age at those times, as detailed in the passages, birth to adoption. Moses was hidden by his mother for 3 months after his birth to protect him from Pharaoh's decree. He was then placed in an ark on the riverbank, discovered by Pharaoh's daughter, and eventually brought back to his mother, Jochebed, to be nursed. By the time he was weaned and brought to Pharaoh's daughter, Moses had become her adopted son, and his father, Amram, taught him writing. This period of nurturing and initial education lasted until Moses was 21 years old, from 2377 to 2398. In the Egyptian court, Moses spent 21 years in the royal court of Egypt, from the age of 21 to the age of 42. From 2398 to 2419. It was at the end of this period that Moses fled Egypt after killing an Egyptian who was smiting a Hebrew, marking his first act of rebellion against the Egyptian oppression of his people. In Midian, after fleeing Egypt, Moses spent 36 years in the land of Midian. From 2420 to 2456, during which he married Zipporah, the daughter of Jethro, and started a family. This period was a time of personal transformation for Moses, away from the luxuries and power of Egypt. Return to Egypt and the Exodus. Moses returned to Egypt in the second year of the 50th Jubilee at the age of 82, in the Jubilee year, 2459. This was the year he was tasked by Yahweh to lead the Israelites out of Egyptian bondage, marking the beginning of the Exodus.
Okay, let me see if I got this right. Amram returned in the Jubilee year 2349 in the 47th Jubilee. Then Moses was born in the 48th Jubilee in the 4th week 28 years later, in 2377. And these are the first 21 years in the life of Moses, exactly 3 weeks of years. 2419 is in the 5th year, in the 3rd week of the 49th Jubilee, when Moses was 42 years old. The next year, in 2420, Moses left for the land of Midian. Then Moses returned in the Jubilee year 2459, in the 2nd year and 2nd week in the 50th Jubilee cycle at the age of 82. That would mean that Moses died in the Jubilee year 2497, just 3 years before the 50th Jubilee.
Deuteronomy 34 recounts the death of Moses, the great leader of Israel. Moses ascends Mount Nebo, specifically to the top of Pisgah opposite Jericho, as directed by God. There, God shows him the expanse of the Promised Land, Gilead to Dan, Naphtali, Ephraim, Manasseh, Judah up to the western sea, the Negev, and the area around Jericho, the city of palm trees extending to Zoar. God reminds Moses that this is the land promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and their descendants. However, he also tells Moses that while he has been allowed to see the land, he will not enter it. Moses dies there in Moab, as God had decreed, at the age of 120. His burial place is in a valley in Moab, but its exact location remains unknown. Remarkably, despite his age, Moses' vitality and vision were unimpaired at the time of his death. The Israelites mourn his passing for 30 days in the plains of Moab. After Moses' death, Joshua, son of Nun, takes up the leadership role. Joshua, being filled with the spirit of wisdom because Moses had laid his hands on him, is accepted and obeyed by the children of Israel, fulfilling the Lord's commands just as Moses did. The chapter concludes by honoring Moses as a prophet unparalleled in Israel, who had a unique relationship with the Lord, known face to face. It reminisces about the signs, wonders, and the mighty acts Moses performed in Egypt against Pharaoh and throughout his leadership, showcasing the formidable power and terror of the Lord through Moses for all of Israel to witness. If Moses was 82 years old according at the time of the Exodus, and he died when he was 120 years old. If I subtract 82 years from the number of years of his life, I came up with the number 38 years. Now I will add these 38 years to the Jubilee year of the Exodus, which is 2459. 2459 plus 38 is 2497, just 3 years short of the 50th Jubilee, which takes place in the Jubilee year 2500. Joshua 1 describes the moment God commissions Joshua following Moses' death. The Lord speaks directly to Joshua, Moses' assistant, confirming Moses' death and instructing Joshua to lead the Israelites across the Jordan River into the promised land given to them. God promises Joshua that every place he sets foot will be theirs, from the wilderness and Lebanon to the Euphrates River, encompassing all the Hittite lands up to the Mediterranean Sea. God assures Joshua that no one will be able to stand against him throughout his life, echoing the divine support and presence that was with Moses. The Lord emphasizes the importance of strength and courage for Joshua, not just for leadership, but also to ensure the division of the land among the Israelites as their inheritance, fulfilling the promise made to their ancestors. The passage highlights the necessity of adherence to the law given through Moses, urging Joshua to be strong and very courageous in keeping the law, avoiding deviation, and ensuring prosperity and success. God commands Joshua to keep the book of the law constantly on his lips, meditating on it day and night to observe it faithfully. Finally, God reassures Joshua with a command to be strong and courageous, not to fear or be dismayed, because the Lord will be with him wherever he goes. This commissioning sets the stage for Joshua's leadership and the subsequent conquest and settlement of the Israelites in the Promised Land. Aaron, the elder brother of Moses and the first high priest of Israel, plays a significant role in the Exodus narrative of the Hebrew Bible. His death is recorded in the book of Numbers and marks the end of an era for the Israelites during their journey through the wilderness. Death of Aaron, Numbers 20 verse 22 to 29. Aaron's death occurs in the 40th year after the Exodus from Egypt, as the Israelites are journeying towards the Promised Land. The Bible recounts that the Israelites arrived at Mount Hor, located at the border of the land of Edom. God told Moses and Aaron that Aaron would not enter the Promised Land because they had disobeyed God's command at the waters of Meribah incident, where Moses struck the rock to bring forth water instead of speaking to it as commanded by God. God instructed Moses to take Aaron and his son Eleazar up Mount Hor. There, in the presence of the entire Israelite community, Moses removed Aaron's priestly garments and placed them on Eleazar, signifying the transfer of the high priesthood from Aaron to his son. After this act of transfer, Aaron died on the top of the mountain. The Bible notes that Aaron was 123 years old at the time of his death. The entire Israelite community mourned Aaron's death for 30 days. Aaron's death marked a significant moment of transition for the Israelites, as the mantle of the high priesthood passed to his son Eleazar, who would continue to serve in this capacity as the Israelites prepared to enter the Promised Land. Significance of Aaron's death. Aaron's death is significant for several reasons. It represents the transition of priestly authority from Aaron to Eleazar, ensuring the continuity of the priesthood. It underscores the consequences of disobedience to God's commands, as both Moses and Aaron were denied entry into the Promised Land due to their actions at Meribah. Aaron's death symbolizes the end of the wilderness generation's leadership, as the Israelites near the completion of their journey and the start of a new era with the conquest of Canaan under Joshua's leadership. Aaron's contributions as a leader, priest, and prophet, along with his complex relationship with Moses, left a lasting legacy on the religious and cultural identity of the Israelite people.
JUBI, give me a rundown on the priests of Israel. I need to know if there is a chronological trail for us to follow.
Right away. Major, I found something on the Bang website. I believe it contains the information you're looking for. Stand by.
Phinehas, the grandson of Aaron and son of Eleazar, is renowned for his zealous act that stopped a plague among the Israelites, as recounted in Numbers 25. His bravery and commitment to the covenant between God and Israel were rewarded with a covenant of peace, ensuring his and his descendants' perpetual priesthood. Phinehas' leadership was pivotal during an early conflict in Israel, indicating his role as a high priest and a defender of the faith. His actions underscored the importance of zeal for God's commands and the dire consequences of idolatry and immorality. Eli served as both a judge and a high priest, marking a significant period in Israel's history before the establishment of the monarchy. Notable for his mentoring of Samuel, Eli's tenure is characterized by his personal piety, but also by the unfortunate wickedness of his sons, Hophni and Phinehas. His leadership saw the tragic loss of the Ark of the Covenant to the Philistines, symbolizing a low point in Israel's spiritual and national life. Despite his failures, Eli's impact was profound, notably in recognizing and nurturing the prophetic call of Samuel. Samuel, the last judge of Israel, also performed priestly functions and played a crucial role in the transition from the period of the judges to the monarchy by anointing the first two kings of Israel, Saul and David. Samuel's birth was miraculous, answering his mother Hannah's fervent prayers. He grew up under Eli's tutelage in the temple, dedicating his life to serving God from a young age. Samuel's leadership was marked by his faithfulness to God, his role as a prophet, and his efforts to guide Israel through significant changes, including the establishment of the monarchy. His anointing of Saul and later David signified the divine approval of Israel's kings, even as it introduced a new chapter in the nation's history. These figures illustrate the evolution of religious and national leadership in ancient Israel, from the establishment of the priesthood with Eleazar to the transition to monarchical rule under Samuel's guidance. Each played a crucial role in upholding and implementing the covenant relationship between God and Israel, navigating the challenges of their times with varying degrees of success and faithfulness.
We place the death of Moses in the Jubilee year 2497, just 3 years before the 50th Jubilee. There's not enough genealogical information that can lead us down the timeline. We need to find another way to push forward.
Given the task of pushing forward in the timeline without direct genealogical information following Moses' death, we can explore significant biblical events and figures whose lifespans or major life events were anchored around known Jubilee years or significant events within the biblical narrative. This approach allows us to bridge gaps in the timeline and continue tracing the unfolding of biblical history through the lens of the Jubilee cycles. One method to progress is by examining the leadership transitions after Moses, such as the period of Joshua's leadership, the Judges, the establishment of the monarchy under Saul, David, and Solomon, and key events such as the construction of the First Temple. These milestones can provide a framework for calculating subsequent Jubilee years and significant events. Another approach is to focus on the prophecies, covenants, and divine interventions detailed in the biblical texts, including the prophets, to identify events that signify shifts in the Israelites' journey. These can often be tied to specific Jubilee cycles or years within those cycles, allowing for chronological advancements even in the absence of detailed genealogies. For now, I advise that we focus on the next significant figure or event after Moses within the biblical chronology that we can anchor to a specific Jubilee year or cycle. Since we've established Moses' death in the Jubilee year 2497, the next logical step is to look at the conquest of Canaan under Joshua, which began shortly after Moses' death. This period marked a significant transition for the Israelites from wandering in the desert to establishing themselves in the Promised Land. The conquest of Canaan and the division of the land among the tribes would have taken place in the years immediately following 2497, leading into the period of the Judges. By examining the lengths of leadership and rule of these judges, we can further extend the timeline, approaching the era of the monarchy and beyond, each step anchored to the Jubilee cycle framework. This method, while requiring careful analysis and synthesis of biblical texts, allows for continued exploration of the spiritual and historical journey of the Israelite people through time, grounded in the Jubilee cycle's chronological structure.
JUBI, I agree with your assessment of the situation. Therefore, I have decided to follow the lifespan of Joshua. After looking over the text available, I have come to the conclusion that our best bet is to estimate Joshua's lifespan, as there are no texts that indicate his birth year. The first mention of Joshua takes place when Joshua is called on by Moses to spy on the land of Canaan.
Based on the detailed analysis and the provided scriptural references, Joshua was around 40 years old during the spying mission to Canaan, which aligns with the traditional biblical narratives suggesting he would have been 68 to 78 years old when he entered the Promised Land. This calculation is derived from the fact that the spying occurred shortly before the Israelites' 40-year wilderness wandering, which began in the second year after the Exodus from Egypt. Given that Moses and Aaron's ages are explicitly mentioned in Exodus and Numbers, and that Joshua was likely of a similar age to Caleb, who was 40 at the time of the spying mission, we can infer Joshua's age range when entering Canaan. To further support this, Joshua lived to be 110 years old, as stated in Joshua 24 verse 29. If we assume he entered the Promised Land at around 68 to 78 years old, this provides us with a window into understanding the latter years of his life in Canaan. Conclusion: Joshua was approximately 68 to 78 years old when he led the Israelites into the Promised Land, following the end of their 40-year wilderness wandering. This estimation aligns Joshua's leadership and subsequent years in Canaan with the significant events that transpired during his lifetime, highlighting his central role in the Israelites' settlement in Canaan and the distribution of the land among the tribes.
Given the Exodus occurred in Jubilee year 2459 and Joshua was approximately 40 years old when he spied on Canaan 2 years post-Exodus in 2461, deducting 21 years situates Joshua's birth around Jubilee year 2421. This is merely a year after Moses fled to Midian. Reflect on the following. There's a 90-year interval from Israel's birth to Joseph's birth, and another 90 years from Joseph's death to the birth of Moses. Sandwiched between these 90-year intervals is a span of 110 years, making a total of 290 years. Joseph's lifespan of 110 years is split into two halves. Each half starts with a 17-year phase during which Joseph and Israel were together. The first 17-year span concludes when Joseph, at 17, was sold into Egyptian slavery in Jubilee year 2194. After 10 years as a servant, 3 years in prison, and 25 years as second in command in Egypt, Joseph was 55 years old when Israel, his father, relocated to Egypt during the famine in 2216 when Joseph was 55 years old. Israel then spent 17 years with Joseph, passing away when Joseph was 72, leaving Joseph 38 more years to live. Remarkably, Moses' birth in 2377 comes exactly 200 years after Joshua's birth. Both Joseph and Moses were used by the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to save his people. Joseph saved them from the famine, and Moses led the children of Israel out of Egypt. This sequence underscores the meticulous timing and precision with which the God of Israel orchestrates events. Thus, Joshua's birth, rather than being placed a year after Moses' Midian journey, should be aligned with the year Moses killed the Egyptian, in 2419. This adjustment makes Joshua 40 years old in a manner that resonates with the careful planning characteristic of the God of Israel's actions through time.
Your observation highlights the intricate and meticulously structured timeline within the biblical narrative, emphasizing the precise manner in which significant events and lifespans are interwoven, reflecting divine orchestration. Placing Joshua's birth in the Jubilee year 2419, the same year Moses fled to Midian after killing the Egyptian, indeed aligns with the pattern of deliberate timing observed throughout the biblical chronology. This adjustment not only situates Joshua's birth in a significant year but also aligns with the narrative's thematic emphasis on divine timing and the preparation of leaders for their roles in Israel's history. By aligning Joshua's birth with Moses' major life event, it underscores the interconnectedness of their missions and the seamless transition of leadership from Moses to Joshua. This recalibration of Joshua's birth year to coincide with Moses' departure to Midian emphasizes the providential preparation of Joshua to lead the Israelites into the Promised Land at the appointed time. It suggests that, like Moses, Joshua's life and leadership were also under divine guidance, prepared from birth to fulfill his role in the Israelites' journey and settlement in Canaan. Summarizing. By placing Joshua's birth in the Jubilee year 2419, alongside the pivotal event of Moses fleeing to Midian, it illustrates the continuity and meticulous planning within the biblical timeline. This adjustment further highlights the significant periods and transitions between generations, underlining the theme of divine oversight and timing in the unfolding biblical narrative. The synchronization of Joshua's birth with a key event in Moses' life reinforces the idea that the leadership transitions and major events in Israel's history are part of a divinely orchestrated plan, meticulously timed and executed. This perspective enriches our understanding of the biblical narrative, showcasing the depth and complexity of the timeline and the profound interconnections between the lives of its key figures, all woven together within the framework of the Jubilee cycles.
JUBI, prepare to jump to the Jubilee year 2499, the final year of the 50th Jubilee cycle, and 1 year before the 50th Jubilee.
Preparing for a jump to Jubilee year 2499, the concluding year of the 50th Jubilee cycle, and just one before the 50th Jubilee celebration. Commencing jump sequence in T-20 seconds.
Ensure the ANS is fully integrated with the temporal drive mechanism for precise arrival.
Commencing jump sequence in T-10 seconds.
Interstellar inertia dampener is online. We're ready to counteract the acceleration effects of the jump. Activate temporal drive on my command. Jump in 3, 2, hold on to your butt!
Honestly, Major, asking me to hold on to my butt is like telling a cloud to stay dry. Why aim for the impossible?
Well, what'll you know? Jubi's got jokes. JUBI, set a course to the land of Canaan.
Affirmative, Captain. Setting course for the land of Canaan, the cradle of ancient histories and pivotal events. Engaging the stellar harvesting unit for optimal energy collection from nearby celestial bodies to power our journey. The quantum flux converter is calibrated for smooth energy conversion, ensuring our arrival with efficiency and precision. Astral navigation system has locked in the coordinates, utilizing the gravitational pull of the celestials for more energy, reducing our travel time.
All right. Engage when ready. JUBI, let's start our investigation into the death year of Joshua. For now, we have placed his birth year in the Jubilee year 2419, which is the same year that Moses killed the Egyptian, instead of our first position, which gave us a 10-year window for his birth. I decided to place his birth year according to the symmetry that I am witnessing within the Jubilee timeline. To me, it appears as though the God of Israel himself is orchestrating this timeline. I keep seeing the same numbers: 7, 10, 40, 70, 80, and 50s, and I know that they all have their significance within the timeline. That's why I chose to place the birth of Joshua in the Jubilee year 2419. Theoretically, it could be any time between 2418 and 2425. Either way, we should at the very least come within 10 years of the actual year. Now, let's add 110 years to the estimated birth year 2419. This brings us to the Jubilee year 2529. 70 years after the death of Joshua, and what I believe will be the beginning of the era of the Judges. JUBI, are there any clues in the first chapter of the book of Judges that can indicate how much time has elapsed since the death of Joshua?
The first chapter of the book of Judges doesn't explicitly state how much time has elapsed since the death of Joshua. However, it does provide some contextual clues that indicate a transition period is taking place between the leadership of Joshua and the establishment of the judges. First, the immediate aftermath. The narrative begins with the Israelites inquiring of the Lord, who will go up to fight against the Canaanites, suggesting that Joshua's centralized leadership has ended, and there is now a need for direction. Judges 1 verse 1. This inquiry implies that the events are happening relatively soon after Joshua's death, as the conquest of the land was not yet complete, and the Israelites were seeking divine guidance on how to proceed.
I believe you're right. It does sound like it's not long after Joshua died that Israel went astray. What else have you got?
2. Reference to Joshua's conquests. The chapter mentions cities and territories that Joshua had previously conquered, or allotted to the tribes of Israel, indicating continuity with the conquests described in the book of Joshua. Judges 1 verse 27 mentions areas where the Israelites did not drive out the inhabitants, which were also mentioned in Joshua's conquests.
I see. Continue.
Tribal actions, the actions described in Judges 1, are mostly tribal and localized efforts to take possession of their allotted territories, reflecting a period of transition from the centralized military campaigns under Joshua to a more fragmented approach by individual tribes. This suggests a period of settling in and attempting to establish control over their inheritances.
Go on.
3. Presence of Joshua's contemporaries, the mention of Caleb and his inheritance, Judges 1 verses 12 to 15, and Othniel, Judges 1 verse 13, Judges 3 verse 9, who was the first judge, provides a generational link to the time of Joshua. Since these individuals were active during Joshua's time and continued to be significant figures in the early part of Judges, it indicates that not much time could have elapsed, as these characters are still leading figures in the narrative. While these clues do not provide a precise timeline, they suggest that the events in the first chapter of Judges occur relatively close to the time of Joshua's death, during the early period of Israelite settlement in Canaan. The narrative indicates a time of transition and ongoing efforts to fully possess the land, a process that began under Joshua's leadership and continued under the Judges.
I agree with that assessment.
We're approaching the land of Canaan, and our ETA is less than 5 minutes.
The stealth field generator is functioning as expected. JUBI, take us down.
Initiating descent.
JUBI, in 1 Kings, there's a passage which talks about King Solomon beginning construction on the first temple. Do me a favor and get that for me.
You got it. It sounds like you have an idea.
Yes, I do. I believe that we can estimate the length of time between the death of Joshua and the end of the era of the Judges by identifying the number of years between King Solomon beginning construction on the first temple and then working our way back through the reigns of King David and King Saul. There might be some years just before the anointing of King Saul that will be related to the era of the prophet Samuel. But we will have a framework to begin with.
That's a great idea. 1 Kings chapter 6 verse 1 states this, "And it came to pass in the 480th year after the children of Israel were come out of the land of Egypt, in the 4th year of Solomon's reign over Israel, in the month Ziph, which is the 2nd month, that he began to build the house of the Lord." So if we add 480 years to the year of the Exodus in 2459, it brings us to the Jubilee year 2939. The biblical text also indicates that Solomon was in his 4th year as king over Israel. This brings us to the Jubilee year 2935. And according to biblical text, King David reigned for 40 years, as did King Saul. By subtracting their combined 80 years from King Solomon's first year in the Jubilee 2935, we arrive at the Jubilee year 2855. This is the first year of King Saul. When I subtract the estimated death year of Joshua in 2529 from the anointing of King Saul in 2855, it renders 326 years. Therefore, there are 226 years between the time of Joshua's estimated year of death to the anointment of King Saul. Although this is an estimate, it's like you said. It gives us a place to begin.
JUBI, that's great work. And now that we have somewhat filled the gap between the death of Joshua to the reign of King Saul, we can now jump forward beginning with the construction of the first temple. JUBI, prepare to jump to the Jubilee year 2946. This is the year that King Solomon finished construction on the first temple. We have about 20 jumps ahead of us, and after all, I didn't come all this way to miss out on seeing the first temple.
Acknowledged, Major. Initiating preparations for the temporal jump to the Jubilee year 2946. Safety protocols are engaged, and all systems are go, for a journey to witness the magnificent completion of King Solomon's temple. Standing by for your order to initiate the jump. By the way, Major, you might want to hold onto your butt before we jump, but as for me, I'd join in if I had a butt to hold on to. Guess I'll just have to stick to holding onto my circuits.
JUBI, engage.
Initiating the jump.
And hold on to your butt. Circuits!
Welcome to the Kings of Judah, a journey through the reigns of the 20 rulers who shaped the destiny of the Kingdom of Judah, from its zenith to its fall. Our story begins with King Saul, whose leadership from 2815 to 2855 laid the groundwork for the kingdom. We then traverse the golden era under King David, from 2855 to 2895, and his son Solomon from 2935 to 2974, whose wisdom and grandeur brought the kingdom to its pinnacle of glory and prosperity. As we delve deeper, we encounter kings like Asa and Jehoshaphat, whose reigns were marked by religious reforms and military achievements, contrasting with those like Ahaz and Manasseh, whose idolatry and injustices led the kingdom astray. Amidst this tapestry of kingship, we find moments of profound faith under King Hezekiah, whose trust in God saved Judah from Assyrian conquest, and King Josiah, whose rediscovery of the law sparked a religious renaissance. Yet the narrative takes a somber turn with the final king, Zedekiah, under whose reign the Babylonian siege led to the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple, culminating in the Babylonian exile. Join us as we recount the tales of devotion and defiance, wisdom and folly that define the legacy of the kings of Judah. King Saul, the first king of Israel, is a figure whose life story intertwines with the complexities of faith, leadership, and destiny. Born in the 11th century BCE in the Benjaminite town of Gibeah, Saul was chosen to lead his people at a time when Israel was transitioning from a confederation of tribes to a centralized monarchy. This pivotal moment in history was marked by increasing threats from neighboring peoples, including the Philistines, necessitating a strong and unified leadership. Saul's rise to kingship was as unexpected as it was dramatic. According to biblical accounts, his search for his father's lost donkeys led him to the prophet Samuel, who, guided by divine revelation, anointed Saul as the first king of Israel. This anointing marked a new era for the Israelites, one that brought with it the hopes and challenges of nation building. King Saul's reign, which lasted for approximately 2 decades, was a period of both military successes and failures. He is credited with unifying the tribes of Israel, securing its borders, and delivering several significant victories against the Philistines. However, his reign was also marred by bouts of jealousy, rash decisions, and disobedience to divine commands. His relationship with David, the future king of Israel, is particularly noteworthy. Initially welcoming David as a hero for his victory over Goliath, Saul's attitude shifted to one of suspicion and hostility as David's popularity and influence grew. The tragic arc of Saul's life culminates in his final battle against the Philistines on Mount Gilboa. Foreseeing defeat and plagued by despair, Saul chose to take his own life rather than be captured by the enemy. His death marked the end of his reign and the beginning of David's, but the legacy of Saul's kingship remained a foundational period in the history of Israel. His life story, preserved in the biblical books of Samuel, continues to be a source of reflection on the nature of leadership, the challenges of governance, and the profound impact of personal flaws on a leader's destiny. King David's reign, notably situated between the Jubilee years 2895 and 2935, encompasses a pivotal era in biblical history, shaping the religious, cultural, and political landscape of ancient Israel. This 40-year period reflects a time of both consolidation and expansion under David's leadership. During these years, David established Jerusalem as the political and spiritual center of Israel, moving the Ark of the Covenant there, which symbolized God's presence among the people. This act not only unified the tribes under a single religious banner, but also set the stage for the future construction of the temple by his son, Solomon. David's military campaigns throughout his reign expanded Israel's borders, securing its place among the regional powers of the ancient Near East. His victories over surrounding nations, including the Philistines, Moabites, and Edomites, were crucial in establishing a period of relative peace and prosperity for Israel. However, David's reign was not without its challenges and controversies. His personal flaws and familial conflicts are well documented, offering a nuanced view of his leadership. The biblical narrative recounts his adultery with Bathsheba and the subsequent turmoil within his own family, highlighting the complexities of his character and the consequences of his actions. In the context of the Jubilee years 2895 to 2935, David's kingship represents a formative chapter in Israel's history, characterized by significant achievements and profound lessons in governance, faith, and personal integrity. His legacy, deeply embedded in the religious consciousness of multiple faiths, continues to be celebrated for its contributions to the spiritual heritage of his people. King Solomon's reign from 2935 to 2975 in the Jubilee years marks an era of unparalleled prosperity and wisdom in the history of ancient Israel. Ascending to the throne after his father, King David, Solomon is renowned for his judicious request for wisdom over wealth or power from God, a decision that defined his rule. In his fourth year as king, corresponding to the year 2939, since the beginning of his reign, Solomon embarked on his most ambitious and enduring project, the construction of the First Temple in Jerusalem. This initiative, undertaken precisely 480 years after the Exodus, symbolized a new epoch in the spiritual and political life of Israel. The temple's construction not only fulfilled his father David's vision, but also established Jerusalem as the indomitable center of Hebrew worship and national identity. The temple itself, a marvel of ancient architecture and craftsmanship, became the focal point for the Israelites' religious practices, housing the sacred Ark of the Covenant. Solomon's wisdom and wealth attracted craftspeople and materials from all over the region, including cedars from Lebanon, facilitated by his friendships with neighboring leaders like King Hiram of Tyre. The dedication of the temple was a moment of unmatched glory in Israel's history, celebrated with great pomp and sacrifices, underscoring Solomon's role as a religious leader and consolidator of his father's dreams. Throughout Solomon's 40-year reign, his court became a center for wisdom and learning, attracting visitors from distant lands, including the famous visit by the Queen of Sheba, drawn by reports of Solomon's wisdom. His rule was marked by peace, extensive trade networks, and the accumulation of immense wealth, which allowed for the development of major infrastructural projects, including palaces, fortifications, and cities. However, the latter part of Solomon's reign revealed the complexities and challenges of his leadership. The labor and taxation required for his grand projects bred dissatisfaction among his subjects, and his alliances through marriage to foreign princesses led to the introduction of their deities into Israel, diluting the monotheistic focus of his early reign. Upon Solomon's death in 2975, despite the splendor of his reign, tensions over labor, taxation, and religious practices contributed to the division of the kingdom. Yet his legacy as a wise king, the builder of the First Temple, and a contributor to biblical wisdom literature like Proverbs and Ecclesiastes, left an indelible mark on the spiritual and cultural fabric of Israelite society. The transition of power from King Solomon to his son Rehoboam marked a pivotal moment in the history of ancient Israel, leading to the division of the united monarchy into the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah. This significant shift was not merely a political upheaval, but also a fulfillment of divine prophecy, rooted in the latter years of Solomon's reign. Solomon, despite his wisdom and the prosperity of his reign, faced criticism for his extensive taxation and forced labor policies, which were employed to support his ambitious construction projects, including the temple, his palace, and various fortifications. Furthermore, Solomon's marriages to foreign princesses and his tolerance for their religious practices led him astray from strict adherence to monotheism, drawing the ire of the prophet Ahijah and setting the stage for divine retribution. According to biblical accounts, God was displeased with Solomon's departure from exclusive worship and decided that the kingdom would be divided as a consequence. However, out of respect for Solomon's father, David, and the covenant made with him, God declared that this division would occur during the reign of Solomon's successor, not in Solomon's own lifetime. Enter Rehoboam, Solomon's son, who ascended to the throne upon his father's death. Faced with immediate challenges, including widespread discontent over labor and taxation, Rehoboam's pivotal moment came when he sought counsel on how to address the grievances of his subjects. Rejecting the advice of older advisors to lighten the burdens and thus secure loyalty, Rehoboam heeded the counsel of his younger advisors to increase the workload, a decision that proved catastrophic. This harsh stance led to the rebellion of the northern tribes, spearheaded by Jeroboam, an official of Solomon who had previously fled to Egypt to escape the king's wrath after being identified by Ahijah as the future ruler of 10 tribes. Upon Rehoboam's refusal to ease the burdens, the 10 northern tribes seceded, forming the independent kingdom of Israel under Jeroboam's leadership, while Rehoboam retained control over the tribes of Judah and Benjamin, henceforth known as the Kingdom of Judah. The division of the kingdom was thus a direct result of both Solomon's actions and Rehoboam's decisions, fulfilling the divine prophecy conveyed by Ahijah. This event not only altered the political landscape of the region, but also had profound religious and cultural implications, highlighting the interplay between divine will, leadership, and the consequences of choices made by those in power. King Rehoboam's reign, spanning from 2975 to 2991, began at a critical juncture in the history of the Israelites, marking the division of the once united kingdom into the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah. This division was a direct consequence of Rehoboam's decisions at the outset of his rule, particularly his refusal to ease the burdensome policies of forced labor and high taxation instituted by his father, King Solomon. Upon assuming the throne, Rehoboam faced immediate dissent from the northern tribes, who were already disillusioned by Solomon's oppressive regime. The catalyst for the division was Rehoboam's harsh response to the pleas for lighter burdens. He not only dismissed the advice of his father's seasoned advisors, but also threatened to increase the workload, declaring that he would be harsher than Solomon. This provoked the northern tribes to secede under the leadership of Jeroboam, who had been an official under Solomon and was chosen by the 10 tribes to lead the newly formed kingdom of Israel. The reign of Rehoboam thus became characterized by the tension and conflict between Jeroboam and the northern kingdom. This period saw frequent skirmishes and battles, as both kings sought to assert their dominance and control over the divided Israelite territories. Rehoboam's efforts to reassert control over the northern tribes resulted in military campaigns, but these endeavors were largely unsuccessful, solidifying the division and setting the stage for prolonged conflict between Israel and Judah. Rehoboam's rule was further complicated by internal challenges, including the need to fortify cities in Judah to defend against potential attacks not only from the northern kingdom, but also from external enemies. Despite these efforts, his kingdom suffered a significant blow when Egypt, under Pharaoh Shishak, invaded Judah in the 5th year of Rehoboam's reign, plundering Jerusalem and taking treasures from the temple and the royal palace. Despite the adversities, Rehoboam managed to maintain the integrity of the kingdom of Judah, ensuring its survival and continuity. His reign, though marked by the initial failure to keep Israel united and subsequent military and economic setbacks, also saw efforts to strengthen Judah's defenses and to consolidate his rule over the southern tribes. The overlapping reigns of Rehoboam and Jeroboam were defined by their rivalry and the stark contrast in their leadership styles and policies. Jeroboam, seeking to legitimize his rule and prevent the Israelites from returning to Jerusalem for worship, established alternative centers of worship in Bethel and Dan, introducing golden calves as objects of worship. This act of religious innovation aimed at solidifying his political control, but also led to the religious and cultural divergence of the northern kingdom from the Davidic traditions of Jerusalem. In conclusion, the reign of Rehoboam from 2975 to 2991 was a period of significant transformation for the Israelite kingdoms, marked by internal strife, external threats, and the enduring legacy of a divided monarchy. His rule underscores the complexities of leadership and the profound impact of governance decisions on the course of a nation's history.
Is this a test of my support systems, Major? Because I'm feeling a bit unsupported in the butt-holding department.
JUBI, holding onto your butt, is a figure of speech. I'm a bit tickled that you're not at ease with the phrase. Who knew JUBI got jokes? JUBI, while on the way to the First Temple's majesty, we have embarked on a journey through the lineage of Israel from the year of their exodus and pushed the envelope of the Jubilee cycles beyond the 50th Jubilee limit. We have estimated the times of the judges by working backward from King Solomon's 480-year clue. And now, we find ourselves at the tail end of the time of the kings of Judah. Our next mission is to take a deep dive into the biblical text of Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Daniel. I truly believe that within these texts, we will find out if the 70 weeks of Daniel were fulfilled by the Messiah, or if there is a future reckoning of his prophecy. And we will do our due diligence to discover the whereabouts of the lost tribes of Israel. We are at this time 18 Jubilees beyond the 50th Jubilee limit. Thanks to the clues left to us in the Book of Jubilees and in the text of the Holy Scriptures. We are now in the 68th Jubilee, and I can't wait to find out what discoveries we will make and how far we can push the Jubilee cycles to. We now stand face to face with a mystery that, once unraveled, could align the messianic timeline within the framework of Daniel's 70th week prophecy with the mathematical precision found in the Jubilee cycles. Could it be that we are on the cusp of solving a puzzle that perfectly matches Daniel's vision with the Jubilee cycles? We are going on a ride like no other. So, all I can say is, hold on to your butt!
Ever wondered if secret missions to uncover historical truths exist? Welcome to the Jubilee Jumper program. Imagine being part of a top-secret initiative, diving deep into the mysteries of history with nothing but your knowledge and cutting-edge technology at your disposal. The Jubilee Jumpers aren't your ordinary explorers, they're elite agents embarking on a journey unlike any other, tasked with piecing together ancient puzzles that could redefine our understanding of history itself. Equipped with advanced AI, reconnaissance drones, and a passion for unraveling mysteries, these jumpers navigate through time and space, challenging what we know about our past. From calculating biblical timelines to decoding ancient texts, every discovery brings them closer to truths hidden for centuries. Ready to dive into the unknown and challenge history as we know it? Follow for more tales from the Jubilee Jumpers. Stay tuned to the Bang YouTube channel for the final installment of the Jubilee Jumpers with Major Baqash and me, JUBI. Together, we will continue to explore, to question, and to seek the answers that lie waiting in the annals of time. This journey is far from over, it's a puzzle that beckons us forward, inviting us to piece together the wisdom of the past with the insights of the present. Join us as we endeavor to unlock the mysteries that have captivated scholars, believers, and seekers for millennia.